Hi there everyone, Lars here with a quick anime review brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And today I quickly want to have a look at the anime Science Fell in Love, so I tried to prove it. This wacky anime has gone on now for 2 seasons, and I'll be honest, I slept on it until recently. And I binged it, and man, this was an absolutely phenomenal show. Now, I will admit at the outset that this isn't everyone's cup of tea right here. This is a show that has a very, very wacky premise of 2 just over-the-top science characters, these people who are basically in the equivalent of a master's program at a Japanese university, thinking that, you know what, I might love you. But I don't know that for certain. You know what? Let's start conducting experiments. And for 2 seasons, holy cow, it's just all of these crazy experiments in terms of statistics, of lighting, of chemicals, of brain function, all these different things to try to find out if they actually love each other. It is honestly incredibly sweet, but also super frustrating. Now then, I'll just say this. I already give it 2 thumbs up. It definitely has a recommendation from me, even though I know that some of the wackiness might not fit well with a lot of people. And also, there's going to be a lot of people who watch this show thinking, oh my, there's going to be some steamy hot bits. And there are definitely some things, especially in the 2nd season, that makes you think that they're about to steam your rice, but it never goes that far, and that might disappoint some people. But what I actually really enjoyed the most about this show is its very honest, very real portrayal of life on a college campus. And this is something that I really have to applaud it for because, I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot of stories out there that accurately portray what it's like to be a college student. And as someone who spent 7 years in college, yeah, I've been around the block. I've seen a lot of things, done a lot of things, and it is so disappointing that there are so few stories out there that actually tap into the life of a college student. But the closest you get is any story that really hyper-focuses in on a sorority or a fraternity, but even then, those movies or shows really don't get into what it's like to be a college student. And underneath the veneer of wacky romantic shenanigans, Science Fell in Love, and I tried to prove it, is just a wonderful representation of life on a college campus. So, let me explain. Within this series, pretty much our main character right here, even though our 2 love interests are Himuro and Yukimura, the real focus figure is actually Kanade, this young girl who has come to the university and has gotten into its higher levels for mathematics and science. As I said, this is basically the equivalent of a master's program. So this girl's already spent quite a bit of time in school. She's a really smart cookie, and she's getting into the field that she wishes to have a career in. She wants to be a true mathematician. And, oh boy, I'm just going to say this. Mathematicians who go on to get their master's degree or their PhD, these people are wackadoodles. And this anime is completely unapologetic about it. In fact, actually, the 2nd season is really all about highlighting how everyone in this program has a screw loose. And that is the truth of it. If you're going to go for your master's degree or your PhD, you must have a screw loose. And I can say that because I know I definitely have some screws loose because I went for my master's degree and I stuck it out and I just got driven all the more insane by it. Let me just say this. College is fun. It's fantastic. But going up into the higher levels, you should only do that if you really need to do it for your future career because, man, it's going to drive you insane. But in any case, Kanade comes into this program and she's like, am I the only normal person here? Everything here is super wacky. And I love that the anime really highlights this. But another thing that highlights is that within these programs, you basically find another family. And that's absolutely true. The more time you spend within your program at a university, you end up forming very strong relationships with the other people there. This is where people basically find secondary families, really strong work relationships. They might even find love. And that's absolutely true. Now, some people might laugh and just be like, okay, so we got Professor Ikeda, who's just like the weird buff nerd. Oh, I'm caught off guard. Ha ha ha. No, this is absolutely true. Get to know some professors on campus, and man, there are some really buff guys and gals out there. I worked with one professor who was in the language arts program, and that guy was basically, I kid you not, Professor Ikeda, who, this guy was old, he was ripped, he was athletic, he was nuts. But beyond the wacky professor, you also then have the life of all these various projects. When you go into higher levels of college, your life is ruled by projects. Your professor's like, okay, you've spent the last 4 years honing all these different kinds of skills. Now you get to put those skills into practice. And that's one of the things that makes actually this entire show very realistic, because you might be wondering, okay, what the heck are these kids even doing? This would never happen in real life. Au contraire. Au contraire. In the higher levels of education in college, this is it. Professor's like, I've got some things I want you to do. Go wild with it. And you spend an entire semester or an entire year working on all these kinds of projects that you basically come up with the premises for, or with the rules or whatever, and you just run with it. And basically, because these kids have been given absolute creative freedom to employ mathematics in whichever way they feel is most pertinent to their work, because they're trying to figure out if they actually love each other. Absolutely. No, the professor would absolutely, in a real college setting, be like, yeah, sure, I want to see where this goes. This is going to be fun. Let me pop some popcorn and watch the insanity ensue. That's what I love about this show, is that the setting makes absolute sense. The characters are putting into practice real theories, real education. The professors actually work with their eccentricities. You have buff professors. It even brings up the rivalries between different programs and different professors. Oh my gosh, from my own master's program, the backstabbing, the bitterness, the politics. It's actually one of the reasons why I didn't go on to get a PhD, and why I'm now here on YouTube and writing books is because I honestly could not handle the scumbaggery or the political side of being a historian. And then another thing is this. The relationships between the characters. Yeah, it's all being played up for fun, kicks and giggles, with all of the really great just misunderstandings, miscommunications between characters who are falling in love. And honestly, once again, I saw this all over the place throughout my 7 years on college campuses, of the couples that you would never expect falling in love. Friends who come to the same university and continue on those friendships. Really bizarre experiences between people from different departments. And hey, you might think that Japan is unique with its festivals for its universities. No, even America. Oh my gosh, the two different universities that I went to, the U of A and NAU, both of them had multiple festivals throughout the year for students to go to. All different kinds of parties. It's not just simply, let's go out and get drunk. No, you've got departments coming up and strutting their stuff. You have cultural events. You have just massive get-togethers for the students to enjoy themselves and to share things. This kind of stuff happens all the time. And then expeditions and field trips and the likes. Those happen too at the college level. It doesn't just cease with high school or with elementary school for the poor fools who don't get to go on adventures and field trips when they are in high school. That kind of stuff continues on into college as well. It's very, very real. You just have to grab those moments when they come, and you can experience that in college. And again, that's just what we see right here within this show. This show highlights so many different things, and from episode to episode, it's like, I remember doing that. I remember that character. I remember that place on campus. And I was like, the only thing that's really missing from this show is that I don't see a mascot of a wildcat with 2 guns strapped to his waist. That's the only thing that was really missing, because otherwise I'm like, I can picture that being the University of Arizona what I'm watching right here, and I can clearly see in my memory the people who fit: Yukimura, Himaru, Ibarata, Kanade, Sosuke. It's just, they're all there. I know all of those kinds of people. So Lars, you might be wondering, where exactly are you going with this? Are you just gushing going down memory lane? Yes, I am. But here's something I want to highlight about this story. Something that I feel is very important for people who wish to write stories, especially in a college setting. Weird thing is this, is that when it comes to the high school setting, we all feel like we've got a pretty good handle on that. High schools are pretty much the same across the world. I mean, yeah, there's various differences in terms of culture or the quality of education, but you know a high school when you step into one. The weird thing is this, is that because not everyone shares a college experience, it's like there's this weird disconnect, as though everyone has just the weirdest, most bizarre, unique college experience from anyone else, and that thereby there really is no way of capturing a true college feel. I disagree with that. There definitely is a real culture to being in college. There are very real stereotypes and caricatures for people who are there at college, and there are very real shared experiences across most of the student body in nearly any university you can go to around the world. If you're willing to do your research and try to find those moments, those experiences, those people, those settings, you can use those to brilliant effect to really bring a story to life. Let's say we divorced this anime from its college setting and we just put it into a regular lab where you have older scientists experimenting with whether or not they are in love. The story would still work, but I would argue that it wouldn't be quite as relatable because it would be like an experiment in a petri dish with no real-world application. Instead, the anime takes place for realistic characters in a college setting that throughout seasons 1 and 2 is given plenty of moments to feel real. Moments and settings throughout the anime that you can point to and be all like, yeah, no, I know that. I've experienced that. I've seen that. I know those kinds of people. Even the last episode of Season 2, which goes a little bit off the rails by finally having a villain in the story, even then, if you've been to the darker side of a university, you realize that sometimes the person who is acting as the nice guy really is a creep. There's been plenty of people who found themselves in that situation. And even the bizarre situation at the end of season 2, you're like, yeah, no, I can absolutely see that happening. And the unfortunate thing is I know people who've been in that situation. So again, it just comes across as very real. It makes the show and all of its eccentricities really well grounded, and as such, something that the story that has just such a bizarre premise becomes way more digestible and way more fun for its general audience. And again, that's why I'm just like, yeah, this show is absolutely worth it. It's really funny to watch these characters slowly fall in love with each other. It's definitely tongue-in-cheek. It's super meta. It's got some really brilliant stuff to it. And by the end, you're like, yeah, no, I am totally on board with all of this. Even the wacky way that season 2 wraps up, I was like, no, once again, I have been there. I have seen this. This is not as far-fetched as you might think. People dressing up to do a mock wedding and somewhat confessing their feelings for each other, realistic love triangles forming, crazy professors encouraging people to do things they probably shouldn't. Oh yeah, all of that stuff happens, and that's really, for me, what makes this show so great. Romances oftentimes feel almost like a dime a dozen. But when a show can come across as relatable, even with a ridiculous premise of two scientists thinking that they're in love and then trying to prove it for 2 seasons, if it's made relatable, if it's made recognizable, people will gravitate to even the strangest premises, and they will come to love it. And if you can write the characters well, which this show also does its characters phenomenally well, you will end up just sucking them into a fantastic story. And that's what the show Science Fell in Love, and So I Tried to Prove It does. So again, I highly recommend that you check out this anime. Even if you have a ton of other things that you want to do, turn on the dub, play this thing a little bit in the background. The wordplay is fantastic. Or if you want to binge it, power to you, because you won't regret it. So what kind of writing advice can I pull out of this series right here? Pretty simple, actually. look for good realistic settings for stories that aren't necessarily set in a fantasy or science fiction realm. Do your research to really understand workplaces, school places, the home, or just meeting people on the street. It's your story. You write it the way that you want, but if you're able to bring in those realistic and relatable elements, people will really identify with your story and they'll get sucked into it. So, that's my writing advice right there. That's my recommendation for this particular anime. And if you're looking for more writing advice, please check out our other videos here on the YouTube channel. We also have plenty of other great episodes where you get to listen to the entire harem discuss all different matters of writing over at our podcast. And you can also check out some of our writing challenges over at our Pinterest page, and we would honestly love for you to come and join us over at our Discord, over at our subreddit. Links for all of that and more are down in the description below. Thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, choose.